All right, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Today, God willing, we're going to be reading the second point, which is all about the divine name, Al-Adl, the just. May God allow us to truly benefit from it. This is the second point from the 30th gleam. It's a subtle point related to the verse. There is not a thing but that with us are its treasures, and we send it down only in a known measure. It's also a manifestation of one of God's greatest names, Al-Adl, or at least one of the 6 lights that make up the greatest name. Like the first point, this insight came to the author while he was in the Eskişehir prison. So, what does that verse say? The treasures of all things are with us alone, and we send them down only in a known measure. Basically, it's saying that everything in the universe, all the balance and precision we see, is determined and created by God's will. So when he gives examples of the manifestations of Al-Adl, the name of the just, he'll also be explaining a deep truth from this verse. He also calls Al-Adl one of the greatest names of God. For example, according to Imam Ali, there are 6 greatest names, and Al-Adl is one of them. Or, as some scholars say, the greatest name is actually the combination of all 6. The greatest name can actually be different for different people, depending on their own spiritual development and what they contemplate. Some scholars have even seen names like Rahman, the merciful, or Razak, the provider, as the greatest name. It depends on which name a person sees most clearly reflected in the universe. Of course, this applies to great scholars like Imam Ali, not people like us. For instance, for the Prophet Jesus, the greatest name was Al-Qadir, the All-Powerful. So what's the difference between a regular name and a greatest name? Well, a name like Al-Adl is considered a greatest name because you can see it manifested everywhere. It's visible in everything from the smallest atom to the solar system to the entire galaxy. Because its manifestation is so vast, it's called a greatest name. But a name like Al-Qahar, the subduer, might only manifest in specific situations or for certain individuals. So it's not greatest in that same universal sense. On the other hand, Al-Qayyum, the self-subsisting, means the one who creates from nothing and sustains everything. Since everything is created from nothing and is being sustained, you see the name Al-Qayyum in everything, which makes it a greatest name. The same goes for Al-Hayy, the ever-living, and Al-Muhyi, the giver of life. He gives life to everything. Even inanimate objects have a form of life. So those are also greatest names. So the name we're studying today, God willing, will open up these veils for us. It's either the greatest name itself or one of the 6 lights that form it. He specifically mentions that this insight came to him from a distance in the Eskişehir prison. It's interesting because most of the treatises don't say where they were written. Why mention the location here? Perhaps it shows how precious this insight into God's justice was. Or maybe it's a lesson for us. We do our spiritual reflections when everything is going well. The moment things go wrong, we forget all of it and just chase after the problem. But look at the author. He's in prison, on trial, facing a possible death sentence. And even in those conditions, he's completely absorbed in these deep truths of faith. That's an incredible example for us. It teaches us to keep reflecting even in the middle of our daily struggles. And let's be honest, our problems will never be as severe as being in prison. If he could write these things in such difficulty, surely we can continue our reflection. In fact, these contemplative lessons might be the very thing that saves us from our troubles. So he says the truth appeared from a distance. And to bring it closer, we'll use an analogy. Analogies and examples help bring distant truths into focus. This is the method of the Quran too. It often explains things through parables. It's a way of helping us see. For example, when you look at the stars, someone might say, "Look for the Big Dipper." They're comparing it to a ladle. If they didn't give you that comparison, you might never spot the constellation. The analogy gives you a framework, you look for it, and then you see it. In the same way, when we're told to look at the universe as a palace, or a city, or a country, it gives us a new perspective. When you look at it that way, you really start to see that it's true. It makes it easier to understand. He says, this universe is such a palace that within it is a city in constant turmoil, being destroyed and rebuilt. And in that city is a country seething with constant conflict and migration. And in that country is a world tumbling through a constant cycle of death and life. Yet in that palace, in that city, in that country, in that world, such an astonishing balance, such a perfect equilibrium, such a precise measure prevails that it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that all the transformations, all the income and expenses in these countless beings are measured and weighed at every single moment by a single being who sees and inspects the entire universe. Let's break that down. First, at the simplest level, the universe looks like a palace. What does a palace have? A lamp, right? Well, the sun is our lamp. You need a floor to live on. The surface of the earth is the floor of this palace. A palace has night lights. The stars are our night lights. A palace has servants. Plants and animals are our servants. You have basic needs like heat, shelter, food, all provided. So at a basic level, the universe is a beautiful palace created for us. But look closer, and inside that palace, you see a city. The sun, the moon, the earth, the rain and clouds as fountains. It's like a city. Look even closer at the mountains, seas, rivers, gardens, and the countless creatures within them, each with its own limbs and organs. When you get into that level of detail, it looks as vast as a country. Go deeper still, down to the atomic level, and it becomes a magnificent world in itself. What's the common thread here? In every layer, there are events that seem to threaten the balance. In the city, you have destruction and renewal. Some streets are being torn up and rebuilt. Buildings are demolished and replaced. There's constant work going on. In that city, you have a country seething with conflict and migration. Think about the air currents, the ocean currents, animals like butterflies constantly migrating. If things are always moving, you'd expect imbalances. Too much here, too little there, but the balance is maintained. If there's conflict, you'd expect destruction, but there's also creation. Then, in that country, you have a world tumbling through a constant cycle of death and life. Time is always rolling forward. Things are born, things die. When you have all this churning, boiling, tumbling, destruction, repair, conflict, migration, death and life, you'd think the balance would be completely thrown off. More death would mean decline. More life would mean overpopulation. But what happens? In that palace, that city, that country, and that world, an absolutely astonishing equilibrium, a perfect balance and measure, holds sway. You see it in the oxygen level in the air, which never changes. The Earth's temperature, the state of the oceans, the populations of animals, it's all perfectly balanced. All of these transformations, all the incomings and outgoings, are being measured and weighed by a single being who oversees the entire universe with his inspecting gaze. Think of a huge restaurant serving thousands of people. There's constant activity. Ingredients are used, meals are made, people eat and leave. Now imagine that the pantry is never empty. The supplies are always perfectly maintained. That could only happen if someone is constantly monitoring, inspecting, and restocking, right? If you just left it to chance, it would fall into chaos in a few days. But this system has been running perfectly for ages. This proves there is someone watching over everything, measuring and weighing it all. He has to be a single being, overseeing it all. You have 200,000 species of plants, 200,000 species of animals, all their countless individual members, plus humans. Life goes on. Their sustenance is created, their needs are met, and their relationships with each other are preserved. The sun, the moon, the air, the water, the soil, all the conditions for life are maintained. This means there's a powerful being who sees the entire universe, monitors everything, and governs it accordingly. Otherwise, if things were left to their own devices, think about it. One fish lays 1,000 eggs. A single poppy flower can have 20,000 seeds. Or think of the forces of nature, like floods. If all these causes that constantly threaten to upset the balance were left unchecked, if they were left to aimless random chance, to a blind uncalibrated force, or to a dark unconscious nature, the balance of things would be so utterly shattered that the whole world would fall into chaos in a year, maybe even in a single day. For example, a fish that lays 1,000 eggs, if God just let them all become fish, and then each of those laid 1,000 more, you'd have 1,000,000 fish. The oceans would be overrun and then filled with dead fish. But God maintains the balance. On one hand, there's this potential for chaos, and on the other, there's God preserving order. If every poppy seed grew, the earth would become a poppy field, and nothing else could survive. Or the sun. God is carrying out immense activities there. If it burned just twice as hot, we'd all fry like eggs in a pan. If it cooled down, we'd freeze in our homes. If God just let go of the controls, the balance would be lost. The oxygen in the air is kept at exactly 21%. If he didn't maintain that, it would drift up or down. If it went up to 31%, things would start catching fire everywhere. If it dropped to 11%, you'd suffocate. For us to live, there are thousands of conditions that have to be just right. The sun, air, water, soil, plants, animals. Each factor has to be held in a precise balance. If just one of those thousands of conditions slipped, if the sun's calibration was just a little off, life would end. If the air was off, life would end. If the water was off, life would end. For 1,000 conditions to be met perfectly, all at the same time, can't be an accident. There must be someone in control. If God let go of the reins, it would all fall to random chance, to blind force, and the universe would descend into chaos in a single day. The seas would fill with filth and begin to stink. You wouldn't be able to go near them. The air would become poisoned with noxious gases. The earth would turn into a garbage dump, a slaughterhouse, a swamp. The world would suffocate. We are constantly polluting the air, but God cleans it through the forests. We pollute the seas, but God cleans them. If the corpses of dead animals were just left to rot, the world would be covered in carcasses and germs. But God immediately sends his cleaning crews to take care of it. You can see this perfect balance everywhere, from the cells in an animal's body and the red and white blood cells in its blood, to the transformations of atoms and the perfect proportions of the body's organs. Think about the length of your arm. It could have been longer or shorter, but it's exactly the right length. If it were longer, you couldn't eat. Shorter, you still couldn't reach your mouth. It's perfectly designed. All our organs, heart, lungs, kidneys, are designed in harmony, working together as an integrated system. Who provides that harmony? Look at the oceans. Water evaporates, and more water flows in from rivers. but the sea level is maintained. Look at the springs under the ground, the births and deaths of animals and plants, the destruction of autumn and the rebuilding of spring. Look at the elements and the stars, their services and movements. The sun has a job to do, and it does it perfectly. Look at the cycles of death and life, light and darkness, heat and cold. They clash and struggle, but everything is regulated and weighed with such a sensitive balance, with such a fine measurement, that human reason has never found any genuine waste or meaninglessness anywhere. In fact, human wisdom, meaning the sciences, sees and shows a perfect order and a beautiful harmony in everything. Think about it. All the books of science that describe the marvels of the universe are really just translations of that order. If a scientist can write a whole book about the heart, it's because the heart was created so perfectly that describing it fills a book. If the universe were random and chaotic, you couldn't write science books. The very existence of science is proof of the order in the universe. Some people say there's no order. A scientist of all people should never say that. The very existence of their field comes from the order they study. The problem is we get used to it. We see it every day, so it becomes normal. That's why these lessons are so important. They teach us to look at the universe through a new lens, to see the truth. So look at the balance between the sun and its planets. They are all at different distances, different sizes, moving at different speeds. Yet they have been orbiting in harmony for millions of years without crashing or drifting away. If they sped up, they'd fly away from the sun. If they slowed down, they'd fall into it. And our own ship, the Earth, travels in an orbit that would take 24,000 years to walk. Despite its incredible speed, it doesn't shake or throw off the things arranged on its surface. If its speed increased or decreased even slightly, it would fling its inhabitants into space. If it lost its balance for a single second, it would shatter our world, maybe collide with another planet, and unleash doomsday. Look at the 400,000 species of plants and animals on the Earth's surface. The merciful balance in their birth, death, sustenance, and life points to a single, just, and merciful being, just as the light points to the sun. Or take a single member of one of those countless species, a bee, a bird, an eagle. Its limbs, its organs, its senses are all in such a sensitive balance and relationship with one another. That harmony and balance point with absolute clarity to a wise, just, and masterful maker. For an eagle to perch on a branch, its feet can't be flat like ours. They're designed to grip the branch. It's given talons to catch its prey. Everything is perfectly measured for its life. The same goes for the elephant or the camel. Each is given exactly what it needs. And even deeper, within each animal, the cells, the blood vessels, the blood cells, and the particles within those cells, they all exist in such a fine, sensitive, and marvelous balance that it proves beyond a doubt that a single, wise and just Creator, who holds the reins of all things and the keys to all things, is nurturing and managing everything through His law and His order. Now, when you're talking about justice, the conversation inevitably has to turn to the hereafter, doesn't it? Because some of God's justice is seen in this world, but its ultimate fulfillment will be in the next. So if you're one of those people who doubts that the deeds of all humans and jinn can be weighed in the great court of the hereafter, if you can't believe it, just look at the world around you. Pay attention to the grand balance you see with your own eyes. If you see a being who maintains the countless balances required for the lives of countless creatures here, your doubt will vanish. This is far more complex than the final judgment, yet He does it effortlessly. So, to the wasteful, immoderate person, to the unjust, unfair person, to the unclean, impure, wretched human being. The entire universe operates on principles of economy, cleanliness, and justice. By failing to practice them, you are going against the very fabric of existence. You are earning the spiritual contempt of all creation. What gives you the right to anger the entire universe with your injustice, your wastefulness, your impurity? Yes, the universal wisdom of the cosmos, a manifestation of the name Al-Hakim, the All-Wise, operates on economy and the avoidance of waste. It commands us to be economical and the perfect justice in the universe, a manifestation of the name Al-Adl, the just, manages the balance of all things and commands humanity to be just. The Quran, in Surah Ar-Rahman, mentions the word mizan, or balance 4 times in a row, pointing to 4 different levels of balance. This shows the incredible importance and grandeur of balance in the universe. Just as there is no waste, there is no true injustice or imbalance anywhere. And the cleansing and purity that come from the name Al-Qudus, the All-Holy, beautify all of creation. As long as the dirty hand of man doesn't interfere, you won't see any true impurity or ugliness anywhere. Think of pristine forests where people haven't gone. They are perfectly clean. But wherever people go, like picnic areas on a weekend, they leave behind truckloads of trash. Man brings ugliness. Otherwise, God creates everything beautifully. So understand how fundamental the principles of justice, economy, and cleanliness, which come from the Quran and Islamic law, are to human life, and see how deeply connected the laws of the Quran are to the universe, how their roots are intertwined with creation. To destroy these truths would be like trying to destroy the universe itself. It's impossible. If you cannot change the truths of the universe, you cannot attack Islam and the Quran either. And just like these 3 great lights, wisdom, justice, and cleanliness, there are hundreds of other all-encompassing realities like mercy, care, and protection. All of these truths that govern the universe demand and necessitate the hereafter. Is it possible that these powerful, all-encompassing realities, mercy, care, justice, wisdom, economy, and cleanliness, would all be turned upside down into cruelty, injustice, foolishness, waste, and filth by the non-existence of the hereafter? 100,000 times no. Think about it. We see God's mercy everywhere. But if there were no hereafter, what would that make the mercy we experience in this life? A lie? We can't deny the reality of the mercy we see and feel. Therefore, the hereafter must exist, where that mercy will be manifested infinitely. If God didn't provide a hereafter, He would, God forbid, be turning His mercy into a deception, a mercy and wisdom that compassionately protects the right to life of a single fly. Will it not care about the eternal life of a human being? A being that protects the rights of a fly will surely protect the eternal rights of humanity. Would a divine lordship that shows such infinite sensitivity and care in matters of mercy, compassion, justice, and wisdom allow the endless rights of all conscious beings to be lost by not bringing about the hereafter? Would a divine sovereignty that decorated this universe with countless wondrous arts and blessings in order to display its perfection, to make itself known, and to make itself loved, would it allow all of its perfection and all of its creation to be reduced to nothing and denied by the absence of the hereafter? No. A being that wants to be known and loved would not cause that love to turn into enmity, and it would if there were no eternity. Such absolute beauty would never ever permit such absolute ugliness. The person who wants to deny the hereafter must first deny the entire world and all its truths. If he doesn't, the world, with all its realities, its mercy, its justice, its wisdom, will cry out with 100,000 tongues and prove him a liar 100,000 times over. The 10th word proves with absolute decisive evidence that the existence of the hereafter is as certain and unquestionable as the existence of this world itself. To believe in the hereafter, with the certainty of seeing it with your own eyes, you have to understand the divine names that produce all the magnificent acts in the universe, as shown in the 10th word. As he says elsewhere, if, after carefully studying the 10th and 29th words on the resurrection, you do not believe in the coming of the hereafter as you believe in the coming of spring, then come and stick your finger in my eye. May God grant us the ability to read and understand. Glory be to you. We have no knowledge except what you have taught us. Verily, it is you, the all-knowing, the all-wise.